Díomh agus fáilte arás. I hope you enjoyed that presentation of Áine Tyrrell, Irish Troubadour. I myself loved the film. I thought it was a fantastic documentary about identities, culture, music, good crack. And I'm delighted to be joined by the director, Enda Murray, and Áine Tyrrell herself here with me in the studio. Hi, guys.
Hi,
Hi,
how
Will.
are you?
Thanks very much for joining us today. Looking forward to chatting with you. Although it's hard, I find as well sometimes to talk about such good documentaries that answer all the questions. But let's dive into it anyway. I mean, Anya, you've already answered the most important question in the documentary, which is lions versus Barrys. So, like,
I've
everything
got
else,
my cup of berries here, so it's proof.
yeah, everything else is just incidental after that. Like, and you're in the bus, the famous
I
bus.
am. Yeah, here we
Give
are
us a tour.
inside. Yeah, well, this is the kitchen, and that's the front of the bus. I drive up there when it's driving, and sure, toilet is that way, and the back of the bus is that way. Like it's
Amazing.
pretty. At the moment, it's more sitting still as a live streaming studio
That works too.
with the way that the world is going. But yeah, it'll tour again, I'm sure.
She will. I want you both to know that this is one of the most passed around documentaries in our office because, of course, during like intense periods of festival planning, we're all just like reminiscing about the documentary and going, I just want to get on a bus and drive off and be a troubadour. That would be so much fun. But Enda, maybe start by telling us about, I mean, this is the latest from you in a series of documentary work about the Irish migrant experience. So how did you decide to tell Anya's story?
Well, I probably met Áine about 10 years ago when she was playing a gig with her dad, Sean Tyrrell, who I'd met in Ireland. And I'm very interested in the migrant experience. I lived in England for 10 years before coming here. I've been here 23 years. I really enjoyed Áine's work, and I felt that Áine is very eloquent and is able to articulate the what's going on in her head, both with words and also with music. And of course, I'm a music nerd, so that really worked for me. I suppose I always wanted to run away with the circus myself when I was young. And look, I worked with traveller communities in England, and I've always been fascinated with buses, believe it or not. Anyway, just the as time has gone on, I've felt that I've got more interested in the experience of being a migrant, and as I've spent more time out of Ireland, and especially in Australia, meeting up with lots of other migrants, because it is a migrant country. The experiences that I would share with other migrants, no matter where they come from, are almost more relevant for me, or I can identify with them compared to, say, people that I grew up with who, good luck to them, but are still in Ireland. The migrant experience, in England, being Irish in England in the 80s was a particular experience. But just bringing up I've got two kids, so bringing up kids in a new country, and are they Irish or Australian? That was a really good starting point for me.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because my favorite scene, I think, in the film is when I think it was yourself, Enda, probably behind the camera, talking to Anya's kids. And there, by the way, you have three of the most photogenic children, and I watch a lot of films, and they're so cute and so articulate. And they each talk about, you know, what a dual identity means to them. And they all have a different opinion on it. Like Taylor was talking about, you know, culturally she feels more Irish, whereas Kehlani was sort of, I'm Irish by accident of birth. What's it like for you? I mean, you talk yourself about being sort of like feeling like growing up between two cultures, and when you see your kids coming up and their own thoughts on it. I mean, you specifically mentioned that you feel it's important to expose them to Indigenous culture, but not specifically Irish Indigenous culture?
Well, I suppose here you can't find Irish Indigenous culture being practiced on the regular. There are pockets in places where, you know, there's trad music and you can go join a session anywhere, and they've been exposed to that. But that's not the story of this land, you know, that I'm standing on. And it's important for me that where they are, they understand whose land that they're on, you know, between our own history of being Irish. It's important for us to acknowledge who we are. And so for them being Irish, it's also acknowledging that they're on, you know, stolen land here. This isn't the land of anyone but the Indigenous people of this place. And in learning more about that culture and being part of it, and being my kids being around it, and us being, you know, working and collaborating with different artists, it's incredible how similar the stories are, and the connection to land, and this idea of like we don't own the land, you know, the language being so rooted in the elements, just like Irish. Like there's so many things that match up or mirror each other in a really beautiful way, as opposed to the experience, I suppose, here, the, you know, Irish pubs. Like I'm not going to bring them to like an Irish pub in Sydney and be like, hey, there's your culture, you know? But like in talking about the stories from here, I can reflect back to them the stories of home, and the stories of, you know, our mythology and our beautiful pagan traditions, and what we also have. So yeah, being from two places now in Australia, I experienced that growing up anyway, being in America and also in Ireland. So I suppose I've always had that double thing. So it's been sort of a thing that I've been able to articulate, I think, maybe to my kids because of my own growing up as well.
Yeah. And, you know, there's some wonderful Indigenous contributors as well. Like Emily talks a lot about this in the film. And I'm curious because the film is in so many ways about, you know, borders, I suppose, and how you kind of don't do them in a lot of ways. But then I wonder, how does that inform your work? Because also as an artist, you probably have to set certain boundaries, right? Like, I like this, I don't like this. You know, even in collaborating with Enda, it must have been a different kind of experience of, you know, from when you're putting your own work out into the world. Like, is your same sort of like, I suppose, is the Troubadour spirit, does that feed into your work as well? Or do you kind of have to set a certain amount of healthy boundaries, like this is my show and this is what I have to say?
Oh, I suppose I wish maybe that I was that person, but I'm not. I'm just like, me as a person is me as an artist, and it's me as a mother, and it's me as a friend, and it's me as a, you know, collaborator, whether that's with Enda or with Emily, I do a lot of shows with her. I am, I suppose, just who I am, and I've never thought about, you know, not doing borders, but I guess I don't. Yeah, I guess I'm someone that sort of follows intuition in a way, and that you know, whether you call it ancestral, like what's come down to us, and I recognize that in other people that are doing that sort of thing. And that's what attracts me to work with that sort of whoever that is. And I've definitely noticed that in Enda in our conversations, you know.
I think you're selling yourself a bit short there, Áine. So, you know, I did put a lot of thought into the title of the film, which is Troubadour, you know, Irish Troubadour, and I do remember traveling in France and Spain back in the day and learning about the Troubadour. So, there was two things. There was that sense of tradition in terms of the Troubadour tradition and how it fitted with an Irish tradition of musicianship and ideas, and we do have a history there with the harpists and also kind of bringing it forward to today. The idea that somebody can travel around and tell stories and sing songs and survive in this kind of neoliberal environment. So that was something I had a lot of respect for, that talent which you have to talk about what's going on and comment upon it and entertain people and make people happy. So those were the reasons for the Troubadour idea.
And Enda, can you talk a bit more about the collaboration, or even just in general, like when you approach a documentary subject and you wanted to, explore some very personal parts of their lives, bringing that out in them, and maybe as well tell us a bit along the way about how you decided on the structure to do that. Like, was the Woodford Festival just like a happy coincidence that this was happening, or was that in your mind for a long time?
So with the collaboration, I suppose we had done some work. I'd done some video clips with Áine, which were a bit esoteric. Like we went to Hyde Park Barracks where the Irish orphans had come. Irish female orphans had come in 1848. And they had stayed there, and we went and recorded a song there, and also went to Port Fairy. So I was really interested in working with Áine. It was when Áine spoke about her experience of domestic violence that I thought this is a story that is bigger, and I think it's a very important story, and it's a story that needs to be heard. And so from that point, we started talking about a longer documentary, but it is a very sensitive topic, and so it would not have been possible without Áine being generous enough and brave enough to share that story. But it does need to care and sensitivity. So that's the first part. The Woodford experience, and I suppose as a documentary filmmaker, you want to try and tell a story with a couple of layers, and it does give a narrative arc, and it is pretty crazy. It's pretty. It's a great festival. I love festivals, but that was it just fitted. It fitted well, that idea.
Yeah. And Áine, you talked, speaking of a kind of narrative arc as well, and I know it is a film, so I suppose maybe it imposes a certain narrative, but you do talk about it's a road movie, and you talk about being on the road as, I think you described it as a beautiful way to heal. Is that still, I suppose, and as we get towards the end of the film, you kind of talk about maybe settling a little more, having a little more privacy. Is that, again, not to impose too much of a narrative, but are we feeling like a closing of a chapter, or is this an ongoing story, or?
No, I think I'll always be traveling, always be. But in particular, being in domestic violence, and then you're told to sort of sit still in the place where these things happened, and that the police and the courts and all these things are going to keep you safe. And in my experience, it hasn't caught up, you know, like everyone's doing their best, but it's not the safest place for victims from, you know, domestic violence. That's where so many things happen in their own homes, you know. And so literally being able to like get on the road and move was like just a healing in itself, being able to move and feel like we were in a safe place. And if I didn't feel safe, we could just keep driving. I mean, that in itself is like really, like, unless you've sort of been in that situation, I think maybe like just the ability to move out of something like and into safety is like incredibly powerful. And the bus offered that a house doesn't, you know. But then also, you know, if you're sitting in your trauma and if you're sitting in the same, surrounded by the same memories and the same people and the same day-to-day stuff, it can be very triggering. And I think, you know, a lot of people, you know, I've done talks and different things with women survivors and in groups, and they're always like, you seem to like have fast tracked through some of this stuff that takes people years. And I think it was unknown to me why I was doing it. It just felt like that was the thing to do. But I think the fact that each day we met something new and we were exploring together as a family and we were just doing what you do when you're on the road is actually like an incredible healing, because you're rewriting and you're reimagining like every single day. Whereas if you're stuck like in the same place around the same stuff, it's hard to reimagine. It's hard to step out of that. It's hard to see what else the world has to offer except for the roles that you all thought you were in. And so I think for me and the kids, like, yeah, the actual moving and being on the road is a healing still. And I found that with COVID, like all of us, this is the longest, well, it's probably the longest we haven't been home to Ireland ever now. Definitely for the kids, I had a trip home a couple months before COVID myself. And it's the longest we've ever sat still right now because of, you know, what's going on here. And that is definitely, I can see that in all our mental health at the moment. Like I can be like, oh, we need an adventure. Like, this is not who we are. We don't sit still. Like, and this is really weird for us. So we've had to sort of, you know, go on boat trips and hiking and different stuff that feels good. But yeah, I don't think that it's the end of a chapter at all. I think this is just season 1 of Irish Troubadour.
Oh,
like
that's
Netflix,
a nice one.
they'll pick up season 2. There'll be a plot twist. I don't know what's going to happen next, but there'll be season 2 and season 3. We're all good.
Sounds like you're going to be busy, Enda. And I'm curious as well that, because I think it must be as well so much about the art too, right? I mean, even for people who maybe can't move out of their situation, I feel like I'm specifically thinking of when you were talking about the similarities of Irish and Indigenous cultures and the recontextualization of trauma. You were talking specifically about, you know, your music at the time and that recontextualization, but of course, the same applies to your personal trauma, I guess. I mean, the making of art has to help work through that in some ways.
Oh, definitely. Like, I think music has been my safe place and has also been a home when, like, I didn't, you know, like the migrant experience as well, where I've never felt Australian enough for the Australian music industry. And in Ireland, I'm kind of this person that's away. I'm not really Irish. And my music is my own identity, so it's kind of been my home and definitely also been a healing room, like a healing space for me to you know, express some bit of my soul. And I think at shows and connections with audiences and people that I'm with, that they see that, and there's something, you know, for all of us, when you see someone being able to express that healing, even if it's not something that you've personally experienced or whatever, it gives everyone else a chance to like do that as well. So I find it kind of a sacred, beautiful space, and a lot of the Indigenous songwriters that I tour with and travel with here that's the same thing for them. And I think that's where the crossing of artistic collaboration has worked beautifully, you know, like as in it's from the same place that we meet our music, from our historical trauma and our personal trauma and all those things, and then trying to kind of dig out to it towards something. I mean, for me, like I don't like to sit in the, you know, just like I didn't like to sit in the house, I wanted to get on the bus and I wanted to go. Like I don't like to sit in the pain or the dark space for too long. It's like good to look at it, but it's also good to like look forward and see what is out there for me and my kids and anyone else who wants to look towards, you know, that good place off in the distance after COVID, when we can come back and hang out in Galway. That's what I'm looking at now.
Yeah, I wish we could have you guys here to do this in person. It would
I know. We'll bring the bus over on a boat.
I hope
we'll
so.
just ship it over.
Yeah, we'll have to do like a rescreening next year, and maybe with like a song or two.
Yeah, definitely.
But speaking of future plans, I suppose. Yeah. Plans for, you know, you're currently, Enda, you're in lockdown, you're kind of under restrictions. I suppose sticking with the theme of art, are you using this downtime to plan anything in particular, or using this time for anything creatively at all? That question's for both of you, by the way.
Yeah.
Go on, Enda.
Oh, well, I've got to get the plug in for the Irish Film Festival in Sydney and Melbourne in September. So that's another initiative that I'm involved in. Yeah, look, I'd love to say that there's other ideas coming, but it's more a case of just waiting. The documentary was totally independent. You know, it received no funding, and it's a difficult thing to do. Yeah, keeping my eyes open.
Áine, how about yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, we've been sort of lucky in Australia that we've been able to tour and work partially, you know, like we're able to work for a couple months and then it all gets locked down and then it sits still. But I have been able to do some shows, and I have a tour planned for September, October, November here. But yeah, that's all kind of up in the air at the moment with with that stuff. And yeah, I mean, I was supposed to be home in Ireland for the year that was COVID. That was kind of my plan, to be home for a year. And so I'm hoping as soon as borders open up and we're allowed to travel, because here in Australia we're actually not allowed to leave. Well, you're allowed to leave, but you're not allowed to come back. Yeah. So so it's a really tough call at the moment, because it's like moving home right now would be like, you know, a dream, but it's also like, oh, is this the right time to do it when everything's so uncertain in every part of the world? And it kind of is like, yeah, every moment I'm like, where are we for the next? So I'm doing like 1 month at a time.
Sure.
And right now, this month, all the shows got cancelled. But yeah, I should be touring Australia, and if New Zealand opens back up, over in New Zealand as well. And then fingers crossed, home as soon as I can. And
well,
yeah,
I can't wait. I actually just have one parting shot question for you, which is when you watch the film back yourself, again, as you know, someone who this is about you, but it's not art that you yourself created. What's that experience like, or are you just kind of used to being on camera and to being sort of analysed at this point?
Yeah, interesting question. So I could only watch it once. I got through it though, as proud of myself. And that's no offense to Enda at all, but it's hard to watch. I've had documentary makers come with me out to the desert and different stuff that I've done, but it's all been quite short and really based around a project, not around me. Like, it's been based around the recording of an album or something like that. So yeah, something that's you know, got my kids, and it's about my family and making sure that, you know, there's so many members of my family all over the world as well, and watching it back being like, oh, but I trust Enda, you know, I think because Enda and I have known each other for so many years, I could say to him, you know, I think I saw one edit before it, or an edit or two, and kind of was like, oh, that bit and that bit, you know, what do you think about those things? And it was really lovely to have that, you know, relationship with Enda as a friend, to be able, and he understands that it's a sensitive topic, so that by the time I watched the final edit, I knew it was in a really safe place. But there is loads of things that really, you know, it's that's shown back really beautifully, and I was quite proud to, you know, of some of the, like with the kids and different stuff that you personally don't see yourself, but when someone else sees that in you, it's yeah, it got me a little emotional, so I could only watch it once.
Understandable. Well,
And,
listen, it was emotional for me as well. It was ended an amazing job. You know, I think like we've mentioned the. Sorry, go ahead, Enda.
Oh, we're just hoping the film will get its Australian premiere in September at the Irish Film Festival, and we're hoping that Áine can come down from 11 hours north, where she is up in Mullumbimby, to come down to Sydney, and we can have face-to-face hugs and a drink. Yeah,
and popcorn. Hopefully,
thank you for trusting me with the story. With your story, so yeah, it's very important.
And where can people find info on the festival, Enda? What's the website?
irishfilmfestival.com.au.
And is it AineTyrrell.com, Áine, for all things Áine Tyrrell music. Great stuff. Well, again, thank you. Well, I mean, we could continue this, but I think we've gone over our 20-minute mark already.
Thanks so much, Wayne.
I can't wait for more and more people to see the film as it continues to get out there. I'm really glad you trusted us to show it here at Galway, and it's just been such a pleasure chatting to you both. I hope we can have a real life catch up when next you guys are in Galway. Thanks a million.
Slán agus bana.
Slán.
Slán go fóill. Slán.
Slán.